What does a perfect battlefield trap look like in modern warfare? Imagine 150 tanks charging forward, confident of victory, only to hit invisible mines triggered by heat and seismic sensors. As explosions rip through the lead vehicles, their entire formation falters. The question is, how did Ukraine predict every move, and why did it end in collapse for the North Korean assault? Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. How could 95 armored vehicles face destruction in under 90 minutes, with the first collapsing in just 7 seconds? The answer begins with a convoy rolling forward in the early hours of the morning, engines roaring, treads grinding across damp soil, and crews believing momentum would carry them through. The line stretched wide across the clearing, T-90 tanks leading, while transports and drone carriers rolled behind them. To the men perched inside, it looked like unstoppable power, but they were driving directly into a space prepared to break them. The scale of the column was staggering. Over 150 tanks moving shoulder to shoulder, 40 transport vehicles packed with infantry, and 80 drones waiting to climb. Against such weight, traditional defenses might last minutes. What few in the convoy realized, though, was that the field they entered was not empty ground. Beneath the surface lay a grid that engineers and combat sappers had spent weeks building, a structure that turned every square meter into a trigger. More than 200 anti-tank mines didn't just sit dormant in mud. Each one listened for seismic tremors, measured heat against the dirt above, and waited for the sound of heavy steel to pass overhead. Ukrainian UAVs hovered silently thousands of feet up, each outfitted with low-signature engines and powerful optics. From that height, operators could mark every formation adjustment, every pause in the forward roll. Streams of live imagery dropped directly into a command station where coordinates updated by the second. The eyes above watched as the lead elements, 12 tanks fanned out in the vanguard, began to press into the designated square. A commander whispered approval. Everything was in place. The first ignition came without warning. The instant the lead T-90 pressed over a sensor patch, a top attack mine calibrated for armored steel released its charge. A molten slug, formed in the span of milliseconds by a copper liner shaped into a jet, cut directly through the turret roof. Crew members had no time to react. Electronics fried in an instant, kinetic shock tore through the compartment, and the tank shuddered to silence. The entire line behind it stalled in confusion. Now, panic became contagious. A single disabled tank in the lead acted like a plug in a massive artery. The following units had no space to maneuver, their angles confined by the column's rigid formation. Engines revved, some reversed, but every attempt to reposition caused only more compression inside the line. Crews leaned out of hatches, trying to signal forward, their radios sparking with fractured orders. The illusion of momentum, so strong just minutes before, collapsed in seconds. The trap's design revealed its cruelty here. A halted tank wasn't just a loss, it was an obstacle. The minefield had been laid so that any detour promised another blast. Vehicles pushing left or right courted seismic triggers buried under both tracks. Heat sensors glowed as exhaust plumes washed across the field, and mines tuned for thermal shifts prepared to fire. What power was supposed to come from massed armor now became fragile dependence. Every machine relied on the one in front to move forward, and with one gone, the rest froze. This was ignition, not climax. The power of 200 buried charges had only just spoken. By anchoring the column in place, Ukrainian defense had turned numbers into weakness. The field itself had decided the terms using not contact alone but environmental signatures, heat, sound, weight, to unleash destruction. And this first rupture was only the opening move, because the true assault had not yet begun. What followed escalated from shock into open slaughter. If the mines caused shock, what transformed the battlefield into an 85-minute rout? The answer came less than 2 minutes after the first tank burned. Ukrainian commanders had waited for the convoy to stall, knowing hesitation would open gaps in the armor ring. The second phase began with a sound that tore across the valley. A coordinated strike of howitzers loading high-precision rounds, every barrel locked onto trapped vehicles sitting in the open. It was the signal that the kill zone had shifted from hidden ground to fire from above. The The 102 S-22 Bodana howitzers fired in sequence, each GPS-guided shell moving with unnatural accuracy. They didn't aim for the tanks first. Instead, rounds smashed into transport vehicles carrying ammunition and infantry. Columns that had paused to recover from the mine hits suddenly became targets for high-velocity steel. Explosions spiraled through containers, setting fire to trucks loaded with supplies. Drones overhead never lost track. They circled with infrared optics, sending coordinates of each movement back to the gunners. Positions updated every 3 seconds, giving artillery crews a real-time map. Soldiers on the ground could hear the whistle before impacts, each one landing with a precision that looked less like chance and more like choreography. Then came movement from the tree line. 32 Oplot tanks had hidden in dugouts covered with camouflage netting, their turrets cold to reduce detection. When the signal arrived, they surged in a staggered line, hitting the edges of the immobilized column. The flanks were unguarded. Convoy doctrine expected forward motion to guard both sides, but stationary vehicles exposed weak spots. Oplot rounds tore through side armor, turning heavy tanks into burning wrecks. In 90 seconds, 25 T-90s and their support partners were reduced to wreckage. Crews scrambled out, many choosing to abandon machines rather than face incoming shells. The counterstrike wasn't unanswered. As Ukrainian tanks closed in, nearly 80 suicide drones launched from vehicles in the rear. These machines, built to dive at armored targets with explosive warheads, swarmed in erratic patterns. Operators scrambled to direct them toward Oplot turrets and infantry clusters. From the ground, Ukrainian soldiers saw dark waves forming overhead, arcs of metal cutting through dust clouds. For a moment, it seemed inevitable that at least a fraction would break through. Electronic units rushed into action. Bilme jammers switched on wideband signals targeting GPS frequencies, burning static into every guidance path. Control links faltered. Drones banking toward tank columns suddenly lost coordination, spiraling downward or detonating mid-air. Anti-air platforms joined instantly, radar guiding bursts of fire toward anything still in controlled flight. Within minutes, the air above was littered with unfinished trajectories, shards of drones scattered over fields. Troops who had braced for shrapnel impacts lifted their heads to see the sky clearing. Infantry made their move at this moment. From concealed tunnels and cut pathways excavated weeks earlier, squads emerged in silence. Each man wore biometric patches across their suits, reducing thermal profiles to escape drone detection. They moved in shadows of burning vehicles, RPGs resting on shoulders. Teams picked out retreating armor, firing at weak rears and side compartments. The field became a place of shifting silhouettes, tanks erupting under sudden strikes, vehicles slamming into each other in failed retreats. But the true fracture wasn't only physical. Among captured survivors, one figure stood apart. Colonel Kimanho, believed to command the operation, was taken alive in the chaos. Seized with documents and encrypted orders, his capture revealed the entire assault plan, a moment that shattered command continuity as much as the destroyed armor scattered across the valley. Modern war doesn't reward size alone. This battle showed that 100 armored vehicles mean nothing if those vehicles can't move, if their sensors can be blinded, or if the sky above them belongs to the enemy. Precision artillery, drones, and jammers combined into a network that turned steel into wreckage in minutes. What crumbled in 85 minutes wasn't just a column of tanks. It was the old belief that brute force can roll over planning. So the real question is this: will future wars be won with guns or with signals, sensors, and the patience to wait 7 seconds?